It is certainly not all risk, but the risks are exceptional right now. First, economically. As we all know, we're trying to manage the trade-off between reducing inflation but sustaining growth. For some countries, it's more manageable than for others. For those that are exposed to inflation, interest rate rise, sovereign risk is a real risk. And so over the next year, the growth outlook globally is, of course, not going to be very strong. What concerns me the most, however, is the gap between how central banks are viewing the growth outlook and their commitment to raising interest rates and markets, which seem to not believe them. And they seem to expect them to fold in their commitment. I don't think the central banks will fold because their credibility is at stake. So what does that mean? That means the growth outlook globally is going to be much more challenging than we think. And because of that, there will be countries that during that period are fragile. At the same time, we have geopolitical risk. Why? After COVID, after the invasion of Ukraine, what we have seen are countries reducing their exposure to coercion from other countries. They've localized. They need to produce locally, industrially, medical supplies. Everything has made them focused on not being vulnerable to any great power squeezing them. As a result, they're more autonomous. And so their ability to calculate risks might seem advantageous to them, to take greater risks than they did in the past. That's a higher risk of geopolitical conflict, not just in Europe, already there, but also in Asia and even elsewhere in the world. So the geopolitical risk profile is higher, but in terms of opportunities, I think the digital economy holds it. That's the place where interdependence is still growing. That's where cross-border data flows can increase. So I think that's the hope, that in a world that's fragmenting physically, digitally can continue to integrate. In fact, it's really remarkable. Not only have the GCC countries benefited from relatively high oil prices, but they're also now receiving the dividends on their commitment to structural reform. The fiscal discipline in every GCC country has consistently improved. And as a result, they have the foundations for growth. And in a world in which liquidity is so constrained globally, they have resources to invest, but they don't just invest by themselves, they're bringing in partners. So we're seeing a surge in co-investment in the region, and paradoxically, and although it's not the intent of the region, but the region is even benefiting from some of the challenging global circumstances. Why? Because investors see an opportunity to invest, talent sees a place where there's still growth, and so talent and resources globally are coming to the Middle East, and they've built a foundation of infrastructure and of fiscal stability that's extremely attractive. Hedging against it. Honestly, right now, it's just the truth that the Middle East is one such hedge. We hear a lot of people talking about staying in cash, and I think for investors, of course, there's a strong case for cash. But really, the only places where we know growth is likely to be very strong going forward, India is probably number one, the Middle East another, Saudi Arabia right now the fastest growing G20 economy, so there are opportunities.